Hello, good afternoon, or I guess good evening or good morning, depending on where in the world you might be joining us from. Welcome to the live stream for today. My name is Natalie MacLeese. I am the founder of Aardvark, which is an accessibility testing platform. And today we are going to go over how to do accessibility testing for keyboard only. So, for users who can only use a keyboard. We're going to go through the different keys, how they work, and what to actually expect. So that if you're going to go through a site for the first time using just the keyboard, so you know what to look out for and exactly how to test things. So while we wait for people to kind of come on in, uh, hello, welcome. We have some crazy weather happening here in Southern California, and I think we actually have a good number of the accessibility community here in Southern California this week for the CSUN conference, which is down in Orange County, about an hour, maybe hour and a half south of where I am located. And yesterday, the high temperature was 68. Today, the high temperature is 78, and tomorrow, the high temperature is 88. So, I don't know. I don't know if you had to pack for that trip. I guess you just put your whole wardrobe in a suitcase and head on over. Because then at night it's pretty chilly, like low 50s. So yeah, a little bit crazy, but right now it's wonderful and warm and sunny and blue skies. And I hope you're having really lovely weather wherever you are. And if you are not, well, it is spring and it should be getting better soon. Fingers crossed. Unless you're in the Southern Hemisphere, but I don't think I usually have anybody joining from the Southern Hemisphere. All right, so let's talk about keyboard testing and why it's important. So we have a good number of different types of users who are keyboard only users. And that would include screen reader users, are often using just keyboard to navigate around. But it also includes a wide variety of people with different kind of mobility and fine motor control disabilities, who might otherwise have a difficult time using something like a touchscreen or a mouse. And there are a variety of different assistive technology devices that people can use that basically, if there is any part of your body that you can move, whether that is your toes, your face, your elbows, your knees, your cheek, um, anything, there is a device that can work with that part of your body and allow you to operate a computer or a tablet or a mobile phone. And all of those devices generally, oh, I forgot to mention breath or eyelids. There's so many. Yes, you can actually control a computer with your breath. Anyway, all of those different types of devices basically are recognized by the computer or the tablet or phone as a keyboard, as an external keyboard. And the different actions that people take, right, the different ways that they might move their knees or toes or fingers or cheek or breath are going to register on the computer as certain keys or key combinations. And so we need to make sure that our websites and web applications that we build are compatible with that by ensuring that we can actually use the website, use the web application with just the keyboard and with just a handful of keys on the keyboard. So that's why this is really important. And I do have KeyCaster hooked up today. So, and you should see, like in the video feed, if you're able to see the video feed, you should see right above, like where my video feed is, it should show the key. So I'm going to press the escape key. Yeah, it seems to be working. So you see there's a little icon there. That's what the escape key looks like. If I press tab, that's what that'll look like. Shift tab will look like that. And if I do the arrow keys, they show as little dotted arrows. and I just opened a menu on my screen, but that's okay. We'll hit escape and it goes away. Okay, the down arrow, open the menu again. Okay. And left arrow and right arrow. And space bar, I don't think that's going to mess anything up for me. Okay, space bar looks like that. And the enter key, let's see, I don't want to be in that menu when I hit enter. Let me actually click onto nothing so I can hit enter without like accidentally ending the stream or something. There we go. That's what enter will look like. So I'll do my best to remember to say always which keys I'm pressing as we move through the examples, but then that should also be visible on the screen as well. And if you have questions at any point, you can just post them in the comments on whatever platform you happen to be joining us on. So currently streaming live to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you have a little bit of trouble with your platform, you can switch to one of the other ones. Just look for Aardvark on any of those platforms, and you'll find the stream, I'm sure. All right, so let's move along. So the main keys that we're going to use for navigating through a website, which is the keyboard, is tab to go forward through all of the focusable elements, and shift tab to go backward through all of the focusable elements. And the first thing that we would want to do is kind of tab through a website and make sure that, first of all, anything that we expect to be interactive is receiving focus, that we're able to get to it, and that we can see that focus. So I'm going to go ahead and click this website here that we're going to use for testing. So this is a live website. If you want to follow along, it's at discoverneptune.site. And it is a site that is purposely set up just for accessibility testing with keyboard only. So I have a question about the tool I'm using to show the keyboard keys. It is a Mac app called Keycaster that's helping me to show those keys on the screen. I tried to use it before and it didn't work. And then like last week when I was prepping for the stream, I was like, okay, let me troubleshoot this and figure out why it doesn't work. And I opened it and it just worked. So, I don't know. And then I was a little nervous that it wouldn't work again today, but it seems to be working. So hopefully it continues to work. I don't know what I was doing wrong last time. All right, so here we are on discoverneptune.site, and I'm just going to start tabbing, and we're going to tab through, and you'll see my tab key showing up there on the left of the screen. And I do have two versions of each page of this site, so a more accessible version and a less accessible version. They are labeled accessible and inaccessible, which is not true. They're just more and less accessible. So just to be clear about that. So we tab, and now I can see that I got to a skip to main content link that was invisible until it received focus, but now it popped into view. You'll see that on a lot of websites, that it'll look like there's no skip to main content link, but once you hit the tab key, it'll suddenly become visible. So that's pretty common. Once in a while, there will be one that's visible all the time. So we will come back to this and test it, but right now I'm just going to tab through the whole page, and we're just going to test focus indicators and make sure we can always see where focus is. So now I'm on what I guess would be the logo of the website, and you can see that there's kind of a blue focus outline around Neptune Observatory, and I tab again, and now I can see I'm on the main navigation at the top of the page. I can see the highlight around home, and now forms, navigation, dialogues, and data. So I was able to move through the whole navigation. I hit tab again, and I can see that it went to the Start Exploring button in the hero. Subscribe to updates, which is right next to that other button. Tab again, and I'm going to scroll up just a little bit so we can see that header. It says featured discoveries, and it looks like these are links out to other content on the site, and you can see that the whole area lights up as being interactive or clickable in some way. And then if I tab again, I'm down at the bottom of the page with a volunteer for research button, and then a join a newsletter button, and then what looks like maybe some little social media icons that are down there at the bottom. I hit tab again, and I end up back at the very top of the page in the browser Chrome, actually, so like out of the page. So all of those looked pretty good. And if I go back up and switch over to the less accessible version of this page, and we try to tab through this one, so you can see I tabbed. Well, first of all, I didn't even go to the navigation at all because I didn't press tab that many times. There's no skip to main content link that's showing up. I'm not getting to the navigation. I'm not getting to the buttons that are in the hero. I'm going right down to the featured discoveries content that is probably taking me off to other pages of the site, and tab, and I actually it didn't move out of those. And now, for some reason, this little bit of content that's not even interactive got focus, it looks like. And tabbing again and again doesn't really seem to do anything. And now I'm back to the browser Chrome. So you can see how, if you're not careful and thoughtful about how this focus indicator and the focus order works, that really unexpected things can happen and make it really difficult for somebody to get through your page and interact with your content as expected. All right, so now let's go ahead and test some of those links and buttons. I'm going to go back over to the more accessible version of the page. And let's go ahead and test some of these links and buttons. So when I'm going to go back to the skip to main content link. Okay, so shift tab, getting back over there. Okay, so I'm on skip to main content. So that is typically a link. So generally, links are going to take us somewhere else. That could be another page, or it could be another place on the same page that we're looking at, which is what this one is going to do. And a button is going to do anything else. So open a modal, toggle an accordion, submit a form, any of those things should be a button. So links you activate by pressing the enter key. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter or return. It's marked return. Well, actually, that's funny. I've got two of them, and one of them on my keyboard is marked return and one is marked enter. Either way. And so now I can see it looks like it moved me down, but let's see if I hit tab. Yes. So the tab key moved me immediately to the first button that is in the hero section of the site. So it looks like my focus did actually skip over that header section. So I didn't have to tab through all of that because I knew I just wanted to get to the content. So for any of our links, we want to hit the enter key. When we come across a button, and this is very confusing because, of course, when we go to start exploring here in the hero section, it looks like a button. And this is a really common pattern on the web these days, is that links get styled to look like buttons, and then it's very confusing to try to figure out the difference between them. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of guessing on, is this something that I expect is going to take me somewhere else? Or do I think I'm, opening a modal? Am I submitting a form? Am I doing one of those other activities? For a button, you can actually activate it with either pressing enter or with pressing the space bar. If you're on a link and you press the space bar, it's just going to scroll down the page. So that one is actually a button that opened a modal. So surprise, surprise. I actually expected it to be a link, but I pressed space and it opened a modal. All right, so we're going to test modals in a little bit more detail later on, but I'm just going to hit the escape key. All right, and that should always close modals. So if you're on websites that are annoying you with tons of modals, hitting the escape key should close them. There is, let's see, I'm trying to guess from my own experience, maybe a 50-50 shot that hitting that escape key would actually close those pop-ups. But it should. It should always close them. So that is one of the interactions that we're always going to be expecting from an accessibility viewpoint. All right, subscribe to updates. It's anyone's guess if that's a button or a link. Of course, we could inspect the HTML. We could use different tools and things like that to figure it out for sure. But, we're trying to be an average user here who probably doesn't know HTML and doesn't really understand. So let me go ahead and hit enter. And that is also a button and not a link. Okay. So let's tab, tab, tab. All right, and here we have what looks like our first featured content. So if I hit enter on that, it jumped me over to another page of the site. So that was indeed a link. So let me go back now. I'll put my mouse up there. Okay, and I'll show you if I hit the space bar while I have this link focused, all it does is scroll down the page. So the space bar will scroll us down the page, and shift scroll will scroll us back up. Unless we're on a button, right? And then it will press the button. Okay, so enter for links and buttons. Space key will only work on buttons. And so that's an important interaction that you need to know if you're a developer and you are building out a custom component and not necessarily using semantic HTML elements. You have to make sure that you are accounting for those interactions and making sure that if you are, making a div behave as a button, that you are handling a keyboard interaction of pressing enter or space to make sure that it would behave as expected for keyboard-only users. Of course, you should always be using semantic HTML elements unless there is a very, very good reason that you cannot for some reason. All right, let's go over to the forms page of the site. I'm going to get there with the keyboard. So I'm just shift tabbing back up the site, and we'll hit enter since that's a link and go over to the forms page of the site. Let's talk about forms and how forms should act when we're using keyboard only. All right, so any of our form elements should be interactive that we should be able to get to by hitting the tab key. So let me just first try to tab through this form and make sure that each of these fields can actually receive keyboard focus and that we can see that keyboard focus is there. So I'm going to tab, and it takes me to my link to go to an inaccessible version. Tab again, and I can skip to the main content, which I'm going to go ahead and do because I want to skip over all that navigation and get right to the form. So I'm hitting enter. Okay, and now if I hit tab again, it should focus the first form field. So I see that it does. I do see a highlight around it. My preference would be to make that a little bit larger or more contrast than what's there now. I think that probably technically passes. It's right on the border, I think, just eyeballing it. But I can see that there is focus there. So I'm going to hit tab again. We go to the mission code, and I can see focus is there. Plus, I can see the blinking cursor in the text element. Tab again, and I can get to email address. Tab again, and I can get to the radio buttons. Tab again, and I get to the checkboxes. And we'll come back to the radio buttons and checkboxes in a minute. But I'm going to have to tab, tab, tab through the rest of the checkboxes. Then we have a select element. So I can see that, yes, that gets focus. Some more text elements, a text area, and then our buttons at the bottom. And as I tab through all of those, I can see a focus ring shows up around each one. And it's pretty obvious which things have focus. So shift tab all the way back up the page, and we'll get up to the top. So text elements and text area elements are very straightforward. You just tab to get to them. And then as soon as you can see the blinking cursor that's in place, or if you would hear on a screen reader that the field has focus, then you can just type, type, type into the field. And I can see all of my key presses as I type in there. I'll probably have to type less practice text. Okay, we'll type Jane in there. All right. So that's very easy interaction. So let's go back down to these radio buttons. So radio buttons are interesting. If they are marked up correctly, they should act as a set, and I should be able to tab into the set of radio buttons and then tab or shift tab out of the set of radio buttons. And that's not always what people expect. So it's important to know that that is the correct interaction. If I want to check the radio button, I would press the space key on the keyboard. And of course, a radio you can't uncheck. All you can do is switch which one is checked. And how do I do that? Because if I tab, I'm going to go to the checkboxes. If I shift tab, I'm going to go back to the previous form. So here is where we actually use the arrow keys on our keyboard. So you can use the down arrow key to cycle through those radio buttons, or the up arrow key, or you can use left. So up or left is going to move backward through them, and down or right is going to move forward through them until I get to the one that I want. And then I can now tab out of the radio buttons. I'm done with that form field. So that pattern is actually really common, where when we have a component, we tab to get into the component. And then while we're in that component, we use arrow keys to navigate around. And then we tab or shift tab to get back out of the component. And a lot of people don't realize that that's the expected behavior. I've had many QA professionals not experienced in accessibility say, oh, I've got to use the arrow keys. Like, yes, that's expected. That's how it should work. So I want to make sure that I cover that and everyone knows. So let's go to this. And then checkboxes are a little bit different because we can actually tab between them, because you can check multiple ones. So again, I just use the space bar to check or uncheck my checkboxes. So I just want to make sure that I can tab and check and uncheck each one and make sure that they're all working as expected. And you can see that I'm tabbing, shift tabbing, and pressing spacebar to test each one of those 4 out. So that's how you would work checkboxes, which is the keyboard. And then now we have the native select, which I want to get to. There it is, our launch site. So when we get to the native select, I can use either the spacebar or the enter key to open the list of options. So if I press space, you can see it's going to pop open my list of options. If I hit, how do I close it? How do I get out of my list of options? The escape key should close that. So yes, that works as expected. You can also hit the enter key to open it, and that one is not working for me right now. That's all right. The spacebar works. And then also you can use the arrow keys. So if I arrow down while I'm on that, it'll open it. And then the pattern that we just talked about. So you tab in and then use arrow keys while you're in here to select something. So in this case, my left and right arrow keys don't do anything, and I use my up and down arrow keys to select something in there. If you're using a screen reader, you'll hear each item announced as it receives focus. So we would just make an option here and then press enter. And then that option gets selected. We can see it in the box. So that's how we operate a native select element. Now, that select element is the one that is most likely to have a non-semantic replacement built for it. So if you are going to build a non-semantic replacement for a select element, you have to remember that you don't just have to add those mouse interactions, you have to support all of those keyboard interactions as well. So, a space or an enter to open it, an escape key to close it, the arrow keys to go between the items and select something, all of that has to be correctly supported if you're going to try to build a non-semantic replacement because you want a certain design. Also look into some of the recent changes for CSS opportunities for styling native selects, because there's a lot happening right now and you can actually do a lot more with those than you used to be able to, and you may not need to build a custom one any longer. You may be able to stick with a native select and you just have a lot more options with it right now. All right, so that is our form elements. And now we're going to go ahead and go over to navigation. And we have a variety of different navigation patterns on this page here. And this page doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So don't be alarmed if it looks a little bit weird, just because we have just a bunch of navigation piled on it. So I'm going to go ahead and tab until I get to our first navigation pattern, which is breadcrumbs. And these are pretty straightforward. It's just going to be most likely a list of links, and I should be able to just tab through all of them and hit the enter key on any of them to go to that particular link. So I can see, for example, this is going to take me to home. And if I hit enter on it, it'll take me home. And then Research Archives is the current page that I'm on. So breadcrumbs are pretty straightforward. Next, we have drop-down navigation. So for drop-down navigation, we should be able to hit enter or space to open the drop-down menu. So let's go ahead and try spacebar now that I have the first element focused. And we can see that that opens up our submenu. And I should now be able to use the arrow keys to go through that. I'm just going to scroll the page down a little bit so we can see that better. And I can use the up and down arrow to move through those different elements, and the up arrow key to move back to the atmosphere. Like always, if I've got something on my screen that showed up, I should be able to hit the escape key to make it go away. So that's one thing that you always want to make sure that you're testing. And we should be able to tab over to the next thing. So rings, I'm going to hit enter this time. That also works to open the submenu, so that looks good. And then again, I can use the arrow keys to move between the different links in the drop-down menu, and I would hit enter if I wanted to navigate to one of those. Those are all fake links. They don't go anywhere, so we just have to pretend. And then once again, I should be able to hit the escape key to close out of that. I should also be able to just hit enter or spacebar on the parent also to close out the child. And one thing I did want to make sure that I highlighted, oops, I didn't mean to hit escape there. Let's go to missions and open it up. And if I tab down and now I want to close this, this is another important interaction that you always want to make sure to test for. When I hit the escape key, I pressed the missions button basically to open this menu. And so when I hit the escape key, the missions button should get focus again. And this one is the more accessible version, so I do see that happen. So my focus returns back. So anytime I open, a drop-down menu, a select menu, a modal dialog, any of those things, when I have toggled that open by interacting with a button, when that item is closed, whatever it is, focus should return back to the thing that opened it to begin with, so that I can pick up where I left off. If you don't purposefully handle that focus management there, the focus just ends up at the very top of the page again. And you can imagine how frustrating that is, that now I've got to tab, potentially 50 times to get back to where I was previously. So that's an important interaction that you want to test for on those. And then if we go down here to the next navigation pattern that we have like a tabs interface basically. And I'm going to be able to, oops, those are all fake links. Okay. So here I should just be able, there's no nested menus or anything like that. So here it would just be a case of being able to tab through that. So I guess it's not tabs. I guess it's just a side navigation that I would just tab through. There are tabs over on the data tab. So we'll look at the tab interface and how that should react when we get over there. All right, let's take a quick look at the inaccessible version of this navigation page and just try a few interactions. So, all right, so I hit tab and I'm right away into the breadcrumbs, and I can't focus Research Archives. And actually, I hit tab a couple of more times and I have no idea where I am on the page. I hit spacebar and it scrolled down, so I wasn't on a button. Okay, so let's shift spacebar to scroll back up. And tab. Yeah. So this, oh, there we are. We finally have something that we can see the focus on. So you see how difficult it is when we don't have that visible focus to figure out where are we and what's happening. So now that I know I'm on the side navigation, let me shift tab back. So that should be on gallery. Okay, so let's see if I hit this space bar, it just scrolls down the page. Okay, enter key, nothing. Okay, so it appears that this particular drop-down menu doesn't have any way into it with a keyboard. So I'm moving my mouse over those items right now, and you can see that with a mouse interaction, I can see the drop-down menus, but there doesn't appear to be any way for me to actually see those if I'm using keyboard only. So that's a really common pattern that happens in a lot of drop-down navigations on websites. So that's an important thing to test for is, can I actually get into those menus using just the keyboard? Okay, let me swap back over to the more accessible version, and let's jump over and go to the modals. All right, so each one of these featured images is going to open a modal dialog, and the first thing that should happen, so I'm going to go ahead, it should be a button, so I should be able to hit the space bar to open it. That worked, great. So the first thing I want to test for is my focus trapped inside this modal now? Because you can see that the rest of the page has a dark overlay over it. And, I can't interact with anything back there with my mouse. So I shouldn't be able to interact with anything behind this modal with my keyboard either. So I'm just going to tab, tab, tab. And indeed, you can see that I'm trapped in this modal. I just move between the close button that's at the top right of the modal and the close button that is at the bottom right of the modal. So all I can do is look at this content and close the modal. So I should be able to, those should actually be buttons and not links. So I should be able to activate them with just the space bar. And it closed, and now you can see focus move back to that first image that we were just looking at. And these are real images of Neptune, by the way, from NASA. So just in case you're a space nerd, you can appreciate these actual pictures of Neptune. Okay, if I tab, I'm going to move to the next image. So let me go ahead and I'll try the enter key this time. That should also activate a button. And again, let's make sure I'm trapped in here. Yep, all looks good. And this time, instead of clicking a button to close, I'm going to try the escape key on the keyboard. And that worked. We're on the more accessible version, so I would expect it to. And you can see our focus ring is back around that second Neptune image that we used to trigger the modal. So that focus needs to move back to what we were just looking at. Okay. And I think we also have down here a date and time picker. All right, so knowing what you know already, I think you can probably guess that our date time picker, we would tab into it. So let me get down there. So we're going to tab into it, and then it looks like I can tab between the forward and back buttons. Whoops, tab, tab into there. And now once I'm in the date, you can see that when I hit tab again, I move to the next form field. So that's a good cue that this is probably where I can use my arrow keys. And in fact, I can use my arrow keys to move around the different dates and select one. And enter works. Spacebar looks like it works too. Let me go back in there. And spacebar, yeah. So likely those are all buttons that are inside of there, and I can just navigate around them. It's possible that behind the scenes, those are actually a set of radio buttons. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're testing the interaction and making sure that it works as expected. All right, so we can move around there. We can pick a date. We can shift tab and go back up here and move forward to April, May, June, etc. by just hitting enter or spacebar on those forward button, on that forward button. And then I can hit the back button and go back July, June, May, etc. So that all looks pretty good there. And what I would generally expect from a date picker component. All right, and then this opened a modal. So let's go ahead and hit escape. And that worked, and focus returned to the schedule observation button. So that all looks really good. Let's flip over to the inaccessible version and see what we get over there. I'm scared. Okay. All right, so first let's tab. All right, well, at least on this page, we can see some focus styles and they disappeared. So I think though that I'm on that first image. Okay, hitting spacebar just scroll down the page. So let's shift spacebar to scroll back up. And okay, I'm going to shift tab back to where I could last see focus. So on the data key on the navigation, and then I'm going to tab again, and it should be on that first image. Let's try the enter key. No, doesn't do anything. Okay, so I don't think I have a way of actually opening those modals here. Let's try tabbing. So I should be on the second image now. Enter doesn't do anything. Spacebar. Scrolled down the page and it looked like I got a focus bar, but it's just because it happened to move my mouse over it. So you can see with the mouse interaction, when I hover over these, I do see a focus ring around them. And then when I click them, I can open the modal and see the beautiful picture and get the information and close it. But with the keyboard, that interaction is just, it's not working at all. I can't see where my focus is. And then even when I am reasonably sure my focus is actually on one of those elements, hitting enter or space key, either one doesn't really do anything. Let's see if I can get to, okay, I'm in the browser Chrome. So I should be on the schedule observation button right now, but spacebar doesn't do anything. Enter doesn't do anything. But let's try it with a mouse. Yeah. So with a mouse, it works just fine. So let's see here. Let me try using this date picker with my keyboard. Okay. I cannot. Okay. Wow, I can't do anything in there with my keyboard in that date picker. Just nothing at all. I can see when it comes, I can see when tab comes back out the other side, but while it's in the date picker, yeah, just nothing works. Okay. And then escape key doesn't close it either. So unfortunately, I feel like you're more likely to see an experience like this in the wild on the web than you are our more accessible version of this. But at least now you know what you're looking for and know how to test these different types of interactions. So let me go ahead and cancel this. And I'll go back to the accessible version and we'll go to the data tab, which has a bunch of interesting interactions for us to try out. So first we have this data table that is sortable, right? So with my mouse, I can click these different headings and sort the table in either direction on those columns. And so I should be able to do that same interaction with my mouse. So let's go ahead and give it a try. All right, so I can see that the name table header can receive focus. I can see that focus ring sitting there around it. And if I hit the space bar on my keyboard, it indeed toggles between sorting ascending and sorting descending as expected. If I tab again, I can see the highlight around diameter, and I'll try the enter key this time. That also works. So I can sort that field. We'll just check all of them just to make sure that they all work. And that last column is not focusable. It's not sortable even for a mouse user. So that's fine. That's not broken. That's as expected. We wouldn't expect a keyboard user to have interaction that a mouse user doesn't have on the page. All right, I need to pour myself a little bit of tea here. I'm recovering from a cold and I'm actually impressed that my voice has held out this long. But I can hear it getting a little bit froggy. Okay. Now, let's go ahead. Here's our tabs. So this is a tab interface, and it acts as a single component. So I should be able to tab into a tab interface and then use arrow keys to switch between the tabs. So you can see I hit the right arrow key to go to the second tab, right arrow key takes me to the third tab, and then right arrow key takes me to a fourth tab. Now, there is not a hard and fast rule for when the tabs should switch. Some of them behave like this, and this is perfectly acceptable, where as I move my tab through, as I move focus through with the arrow keys, the content in the tab panel is what we call this area, like the area that has the actual tab content is called a tab panel. So the tab panel changes as soon as my arrow key lands on each one. And that is a perfectly acceptable interaction. There's nothing wrong with it. You could also do where the arrow keys would just move focus to the tab, but not actually change it until you hit enter or spacebar, and then the tab panel content would change. That is also a perfectly acceptable interaction. As long as it's consistent and the whole set of tabs acts the same, that's the main thing that we want to pay attention to, is can I get to all of the content that is in that tab panel in some way, whether I have to hit enter a tab for the tab I want or just highlighting the tab I want highlights it. And I hit 0 by accident. That didn't mean anything. Just bumped it on my keyboard. Okay, so that is how a tab panel should interact. So we tab into the tab panel, use our arrow keys to pick a tab, or to pick which tab we want to look at. That alone, just the arrow key moving, might change the content, or we might have to hit the enter key or the spacebar key. But we should be able to access all of that tab content with just the keyboard. All right, let's see what we've got next on this page. We've got an accordion. And with an accordion, I should be able to tab between all of the different headers. So this is a little bit of an exception to the tab in, tab out. I should be able to tab to each of the headers, and then hitting either the enter key or the space bar should expand and collapse those. So let me go ahead. I can see focus is on the first one in the list. If I hit the space bar, we can see that it opens. And of course, there's two different ways accordions can behave. We could have only one panel open at a time, so opening a second one closes the first one. Or we can have, they could all be open or all be closed, or any combination. So this one is the second type. We can open or close those at will, and they don't affect the other panels. So either way is fine. But I should be able to get to all of that content with just the keyboard. Of course, if we're also using a screen reader, we would want to hear that we're in a collapsible content, and we would want to hear the state of it. Is it open or closed? And would be able to open or close it as well. But we're just looking at keyboard for today. So I should be able to tab to each one of these. And here I'm hitting space, and it is toggling them open or closed. This one, I'll try the enter key. That opens and closes it. And of course, you want to test them all, because sometimes there is just something sneaky that happens and one of them won't toggle for some reason. So you always want to make sure to test each panel in an accordion and make sure that it opens or closes. All right, let's see what we've got next. Oh, carousel, yes. All right, so generally our carousel is going to be controlled by a series of buttons. And we see right away, this carousel is automated. I'm not controlling it. I'm not touching anything. And it is scrolling through the different slides it has. But you can see my focus is on the back button in the carousel. I do see a focus ring around it, and it looks like this second button here is a tab button. I'm sorry, a pause button rather. So let me hit the space bar. And I saw it toggle. Now it looks like a play button. So at least I was able to control the automated animation. So my first preference, I think, well, generally everyone's first preference is no automated animation, that's something a user should have to opt into, right? So rather than coming to this and seeing automation or animation rather by default and having to pause it, it would be better if I came to it and it was paused and I would have to opt in to pressing the play button. That would be the preferred interaction. But if that is not a choice for you, because we have to do accessibility in the real world, and sometimes there are business considerations and marketing teams and designers who have different opinions, then the next best thing is to make a clear and obvious pause button that is easy to get to and is clearly labeled. So if I'm a screen reader user, or a keyboard only user, or whatever assistive technology I happen to be using, I should be able to very quickly find and activate that pause button to stop that interaction. All right, and then I should be able to tab. So it looks like for this carousel, the little dots that indicate where I am in the carousel. So I can see I've got 4 of those here, and it looks like the second one is my current slide. I should be able to tab through, and hitting spacebar in any one of those it's a button. So that's going to activate it and move me to that slide. So if I shift tab back to the first one, then I can go to the first slide. I also have these buttons for next and back that I could just hit that one. So either space or enter key is going to activate that one, and I can move through the slides that way. All right, let me flip over to the inaccessible version of this page, and we'll see what we can make of it with our keyboard. All right, so, well, it looks like we didn't even try on the table sorting here. So not an option for mouse users or keyboard users, I think. Unless, nope, yeah. So not even an option. All right, let's take a look at tab. Of course, I can't see where I am. Let's see. Where am I? All right, yeah, this is totally unusable because I cannot see where I am at any point in the page, and hitting enter. And again, like, unfortunately, if you go out into the wild and start testing websites, this is the experience that you can expect, rather than the nice accessible one that we were just looking at. Yeah, I cannot see where I am. Let's see. Okay, data. So if I tab again, I should be on that overview because I think that's the next focusable thing. But enter doesn't do anything, and space just scrolls me down. And I definitely cannot tab. Well, there's no pause button on my carousel either. So that's another problem, which is not a keyboard specific problem. That's a separate accessibility issue. But we've got a lot of issues here on the inaccessible version of the page. So we've got no visible focus indicators. We can't pause things. We might have a keyboard trap here. It's actually kind of hard to tell because I can't actually tell where my focus is for most of the page. I can just tell the navigation and not really anything else. So sometimes you can get a keyboard trap. So let's talk about that for a second, because if I go back over to the dialogues, right? When I open up this dialogue and then I'm trying to tab with my keyboard. Oh, wait, I'm on the inaccessible version. Let me go to the accessible one. There we go. Okay. So I'm on the accessible version. Once this is open, right, I tab, and my focus is trapped in this modal. And for accessibility reasons, that's not really considered what would be called a keyboard trap, because I can close the modal. Like, I have that option to get out of it. So I can click one of the 2 close buttons, or I can hit escape key on my keyboard and I'm out of the modal. So my focus is trapped in there while it's open, but I have the ability to get out. There are other ways of building components sometimes where the user just cannot get out of it. So they can tab and shift tab and arrow keys and everything else to their heart's content. But once they have tabbed into something, they can't get the tab back out of it. And so they can't interact with the rest of the page. And sometimes the only choice that you have is to refresh the page and then try to avoid that element as you're moving through the screen afterward. So you always want to check for those as well. On our inaccessible versions, it's possible we have a keyboard trap, but using just keyboard alone, it's actually difficult to tell because so little of our focus is actually visible to us. So we can't actually even tell. The focus might be getting trapped somewhere, but it's hard to tell because we just can't see where it is. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of, is that for a while, it was pretty common for video players to act as keyboard traps. And once you had kind of tabbed into a video player, like, that was it. You could play the video or stop the video, and then you couldn't get back to the rest of the page to interact with it. So be on the lookout for that as you're doing accessibility testing with keyboard as well. Like anywhere that you get to that you can't get back out, and that you would want to log as an accessibility failure as a keyboard trap. Things that we can't activate at all with the mouse. So we saw a lot of that on the inaccessible version, right? If I switch to the inaccessible version of this page with the modals, with my mouse, it works great. I can click these images, I can open the modal dialogues, get all the information. But you saw that with the keyboard, like just nothing happened, right? So here, I can't see that my focus is there, but then hitting spacebar and enter and everything doesn't do anything. I don't have any way of accessing that information. So you want to be on the lookout for things like that that you just cannot activate at all with your mouse. And then also the skip link. So this page has a particularly short navigation with just 5 elements in it. But even so, you can see that when I already know, right, I'm already on the site. I know what's here. I don't need to go through the navigation. Let me just get to the content. This is actually really handy. It's really helpful. It saves me a lot of time. It saves me a lot of keystrokes. So keep a lookout for the missing skip link. And you can have more than one skip link on a page. So if I have a big chunky navigation in the header, but then I have another one in the sidebar on the page, I could put a skip link right before that as well and say skip the side navigation. So you can skip all different parts of a page if you just want to give some thought to what would be a big hassle to have to tab through, that a user might want to be able to skip to and quickly get to. You can put a skip link, you can put multiple skip links on a page, and let users have a quick way to get past something that maybe they don't want to look at right now and would otherwise require, dozens of taps on that tab key. All right, so keyboard testing is absolutely free to do. You need absolutely no equipment whatsoever besides something you probably already have. And if you've got a laptop, it's even attached to it. You can't even take it off. So you just have to have your keyboard. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to know what the interactions are that people are going to be expecting on different types of elements. A lot of people don't realize about the spacebar. A lot of people don't realize about the arrow keys. And a lot of people don't know about the escape key for closing things either. So if you are a developer building out custom components, it's important that you know about all of those and that you're programming those into your custom components. And if you are otherwise just doing accessibility testing, it's important that you know all of the different interactions that you actually have to be testing for to make sure that you're catching all of those different accessibility issues. All right, so that wraps up our topic for the day. Thank you so much for joining me. I do these live streams every other Wednesday at the same time. If you miss it or you miss part of it, they are recorded and saved forever on YouTube and LinkedIn. Facebook, for some reason, deletes them after a month. I don't know why, but they do. But it'll be up on Facebook for a month. It'll be on LinkedIn and YouTube forever. If you want to come back, refer to it later, watch it later, whatever works for you. And 2 weeks from today, I'll be back with another topic. I think we might do screen reader and do voiceover next time, and show people how to do some basic testing with a screen reader. And we can maybe even use this exact same website and see all of the different screen reader interactions that we would be expecting on top of the keyboard interactions. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you joining me. I know it's lunchtime for me, so I'm going to go have lunch now. But I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I will see you next time.